um, one part of that, as far as like what cycle are you ready to see end, this could be kind of true for all of us, maybe, is the cycle of self rejection. That feels really nice. That, like, kind of the Taurus end of the spectrum of it is what it is. Our natural animal self is what it is. We have desires, we have urges, we have impulses that we do not always accept within ourselves. There can be serious self judgments. And that's another piece of like one of the TED Talks I listen to around conflict is like, you're not trying to get rid of your judgments. You're not trying to stop judging yourself because basically that would be impossible. But we can respond to our judgments differently. We can be curious about them. We can wonder, why does it bother me? When I like, one of the things that I can beat up on myself for, especially watching back through my old content, is I feel like my Scorpio and my Capricorn placements are like hardcore judging my Gemini placements for being so giggly and laughy, and like she smiles about everything even when she's talking about awful uncomfortable subjects. And like, what is she doing? Like, this is me judging me inside of myself. And there's like that kind of dynamic, I think, is somewhat unavoidable, especially the more you cultivate self-awareness. Like, when you can be aware of your behavior, there is a really good chance that a lot of times you're not going to be a fan of what the hell you're doing. And that if like you look back on it, or even just like a split second later, you're like, oh my God, like what did I say? What did I just do? Why am I doing that? Like, when you're self-aware, like there's studies now, and I've seen Dr. K talk about this a couple of times on his channel, Healthy Gamer, where there's studies correlating self-awareness with depression, meaning like when the more self-aware you are, the higher your risk for depression, because the more you can see yourself clearly, the better the chances you're not going to like it. And so that is, again, one of those pieces of like the hard reality of like conflicts not going away. Self-awareness makes things worse before it makes things better, basically, is another way to summarize that. Like, these hard truths about like this is how it is. And that scorpionic ability to face the truth, no matter how hard, no matter how ugly, no matter how unpopular, no matter how inappropriate. Scorpio can look at it because it wants to know what's true. It's very curious about getting to the bottom of the truth. And that can serve us very well on this lunar full moon, sorry, this lunar eclipse full moon in Scorpio. That light of looking at hard truths can serve us really well when it comes to, are you getting the harvest you need? Back on the Taurus side, are you getting the harvest you need? And if you're not, then there are some choices that need to be made differently. And this full moon lunar eclipse can help to inform what those choices are. I thank you so much for listening. I am so excited to re-listen and receive this message myself. I feel like my spirit guides, my ancestors, all those awesome souls were really with me on this one, giving me these questions ahead of time, like what cycle are you ready to see end? And the experience of that this morning with diving into conflict and being like, this is scary, but I want this. And so I'm gonna make myself choose it. I'm going to make that choice, even though it's uncomfortable, even though it's stepping way outside my comfort zone. I'm going to lean in. And now I'm going to look back through the chat and see if there's anything in there that I want to respond to. If you are here and you want to put something in the chat, I'm going to hang out for just a little bit and do some responding. For those of you catching the replay, I would love to hear from you too, down in the comments. What cycle are you ready to see end? What movie have you watched 275 times and you're just over it? You're done. Like, you're ready to move forward. What is that? I would love to get to hear. Oh, so my descendant is also in Scorpio. Tanya's telling me about that. Um, yeah, the just I think this can come from lots of different placements. The sense of I'm not good enough yet or at all. Like like either I have to be redeemed, aka I'm not good enough yet, or I'm not even worthy of redemption. Meaning I've fucked it up so bad that there's no hope for me. Like that sense of hopelessness, yeah, that's one of those things that's like, you know, we can live there. I've lived there. I bought housing in hopelessness. I lived there for a good long while. But it goes back to that Taurus question of, does this produce the harvest that you need? And in my experience, all that ever got me, like all of that, like I'm not good enough, I'm bad, I did it wrong, like all of that brought me to not wanting to exist anymore. Like, that's what I harvested out of doing it that way, of feeling that way about myself, and I decided this was in July of 2016 when I sought out a new therapist, new to me at the time. I sought her out because I'm tired of harvesting this. I want to harvest something different. And she handed me the deservability treatment. I'll put that link in the description box below as well. I have a video and a blog post because it was so transformational for me. And so that feels really good as far as like supporting you in that transformation of making a different choice. And you're so right, Tanya, that so much of it believes that you deserve a better harvest than what you're getting right now. And that, do you deserve a better harvest? Like that runs deep. That runs deep. And maybe you don't think you do. Or maybe it's like the inner conflict we were talking about with like some part of you thinks that, yes, I do deserve better than this. And another part is your mom's voice or your dad's voice or your grandma's voice or whoever that's saying, like, who the hell do you think you are? Of course you don't deserve anything better than this. Like you should be grateful you even got this much. Like there can be those conditioned multiple voices that are speaking about the same topic where sometimes I believe I deserve it and other times I don't. And until all of you can come onto the side and be integrated onto the side of I deserve a better harvest, then the path to the better harvest can be clear. But while there's still a part of us that believes we don't deserve it, we will stay in that cycle and we'll believe we're stuck. So, working on believing it, working on believing that a better harvest is possible and that you personally deserve it is part of what this Scorpio full moon lunar eclipse could be bringing up for us. Hello, Uta. Welcome. Fourth house eclipse within 1 degree of your natal Scorpio moon. Holy moly. Scorpio moons in particular have like have a really hard time letting go. And that is for many reasons, but mostly because the moon represents our emotions. Scorpio is fixed water. So like holding a grudge, like that idea of holding a grudge, like somebody hurt me 20 years ago and I'm still mad about it. Like that kind of thing, like just can't let go, just can't like move forward. So this, like, especially for anybody who has any Scorpio placements, I would say the chances that this full moon lunar eclipse could be like showing you a cycle, maybe even a cycle that has been going on for your entire life. Like as you see this cycle that's ready to end, it could be like I'm just like witnessing this almost like crabgrass, where like the reason crabgrass is so hard to get rid of is because like every little bit it like shoots out another set of roots. And so you like pull this clump out and that only gets you so far because now here's this another clump with these roots and this other clump with these roots. And this cycle that's ready to end, it has roots through our entire life, is like what I just saw. And that feels really real because when we do start unpacking the harvest that we're receiving right now and the reasons we're settling for the harvest we're receiving right now, you look back at all of the different subconscious structure that has led to why your physical life is what it is, right? Like on the Taurus end of the spectrum, like Taurus is associated with simplicity and Scorpio with complexity, simplicity, complexity. And so on the surface, it may look really simple, like, oh, I just don't have a job or whatever. Like, that's why I don't have any money. But like underneath the substructure of that simple fact of I don't have a job. That's why I don't have enough money, it's like, yeah, but why don't you have a job? Like, why haven't you put yourself in that position? Why aren't you choosing that? Why aren't you putting yourself out there? Blah, 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 blah. Like, there's roots. There's roots underneath the I don't have enough money because I don't have a job. There's all of these different experiences, all of these different roots back through your entire life that have led to that very simple, on the surface looking situation. So there's absolutely something coming to our attention, I mean, not coming as in the off-planet sky daddy is gonna bring it to us, but, like, coming to our attention so that we as beings full of our own autonomy can make a different choice for ourselves. Oh, Taurus sun, Scorpio moon. Oh boy. Wow. So that means you were born either like on the full moon or super close, like the day or day before, day after the full moon. And so yeah, I'll bet this whole cycle of, like what is this cycle that's coming to an end, and what are the roots that go all the way back through your life, like again probably even more so for the people who have really strong Taurus Scorpio placements, because you're the ones that are more often holding on and not necessarily letting go as quickly as something has outlived its usefulness. Like there's a tendency to hold on even after something is no longer useful. I don't know if I fully agree with that, because I think, like, until you let go, you're still using it for something. You're still you're still getting some utility out of it. Like, that's the whole point of, like, there is no such thing as being stuck. There's gaining utility from the thing. Like, when I drink every day, like, I'm not doing that for no reason. I was getting something from that experience. And until I was able to get whatever that was from somewhere else, letting go of that was not really even possible. It, like, had to work itself out naturally. Um, but yeah, I think, like, the cycle is probably something that has been being brought to our attention since January of 2022, that there has been a massive opening since January 2022 when the South Node first stepped into 29 degrees of Scorpio and began that deep emotional purge of our past and our attachments and our relationship dynamics and where we source our power and how we get security. All of that has been under review with the Scorpio South Node transiting over that sign. And now, here we are with the final eclipses of this Taurus Scorpio cycle. I take that back. I think one of the eclipses in the fall is a Taurus eclipse. I could be wrong about that though. But this is the final full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio that we're going to have with this nodal cycle. And so, like, this is kind of a grand finale of what has the South Node in Scorpio been trying to show you for the last like 15 months. And we experienced this on May 5th, and then it's about mid-July. So a little more than 2 more months of the South Node continuing through Scorpio until it reaches 0 degrees and finally tips on into Libra in July of 2023. So this is a massive end of a cycle that has many sets of roots that probably over the last 15 months, you've been working with these roots, these roots, these roots, and it's like there's just always more freaking roots. And you just keep excavating. You just keep pulling the next clump of crabgrass, and then here it is. It just shows you where the next one is. And it's like, I think what is happening with this full moon lunar eclipse on May 5th is we've been plucking these small patches of crabgrass this whole time, these last 15 months, and we've been working our way back to like get the root, get the root, get the root, get the root. And this, what's going to be shown to us is like the actual Mac Daddy of the trauma, the wound, the original root of what started, like the wounding, the original wound is what created the first set of roots, and then because of those roots, here's this other issue that then happened. And so here's more roots. And because of that wounding, then we did things this way, and here's these next roots. And it's like the wound perpetuates more wounding, and so we've kind of been working it backwards in reverse, like this whole 15 months of Scorpio South Node, of like healing the most recent little bit, and then the next most recent little bit, and working our way back to the original, the like what the hell happened, like back in the day, to set up this particular pattern of wounding that we've been unraveling for the better part of a year and a half. So what we're going to see is no doubt going to bring with it a tidal wave of swampy emotions. I mean that with all the love in the world because I personally love a good cry. That's most of what I did yesterday. I watched Hunger Games 1 and 2 and cried like all day. It felt amazing to like just burn that off. Um, to go really nicely with all the crying I did last week when I was so mad on the Libra full moon. That was another day where I just sat there and cried almost all day, just off and on. Maybe it's like the Mars in Cancer. Like there's a lot of turbulent emotion that is coming to the surface, but like not in a way where anything has gone wrong, not in a way where you've done anything wrong, but in a way where it has to come up to come out. And so just kind of be ready for that and be ready to like, like really hold yourself in that turbulence and breathe and, do the Taurus North Node thing where we anchor into our physical breath. We anchor into this physical moment of, I'm sitting on this chair, I'm breathing this oxygen, I ate today, like I'm okay. Like in a very simple physical way, I'm okay, and to be able to anchor to that as a place to kind of like I'm seeing like cliff, like down a well or something, or like Mission Impossible, Mission Impossible style, where like you're repelling, like you're hooked on up here, and that's what lets you like repel down into the hole. You're not just diving headfirst into the hole, you're connected to the surface through your breath, through this like safety line, this harness that can pull you back up at any time. You can come back into the physical right now reality and you'll be okay, right? Like Byron Katie says, other than what I'm thinking and believing, I'm totally okay. Granted, those thoughts and beliefs and like the imagination, the fantasy of what's going on in our mind can strip us of our security in an instant. It can throw us into fear and danger in an instant just by having some kind of visual in our mind. And that's what I'm talking about with like before you dive into this hole of Scorpio and like really trying to excavate the roots, that's where the Taurus North Node is so helpful to keep ourselves connected to the physical, to the well-being of this breath in this moment. Everything is okay. All is well. And if we can remember that, then there's some real opportunity for like healing that wound, that core wound that has been at the heart of our identity, that has been the most guarded, the most protected, the most defended piece of ourselves. And all of that to say, the one creating the most vicious monster in our reality because it's the most ignored. It's the most feared. And because it's the most ignored, it comes out the most viciously in our life to attack and taunt and haunt us through whoever person we can project it on at the time. And I am very lovingly holding my tormentors in this space because I know that it's easier for me to look at their face than to see it as my own face, than to find this wound that I just like cannot bring myself to have a good look at. And that's why this person is here. And there is one in my world that still here, still here. I'm like, what else is it? What do you want from me? There's something in there. There's a wound. There's part of the wound that's not healed yet. And I think that's true for all of us. And I think this full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio is going to be making us aware. And so I do hope that you hold yourself with the Taurus, motherly, nurturing, patient love of all that has to go into it, every moment of nurturing that has to go in to growing your harvest. And sometimes that means we have to break apart the soil so the seed can get planted. And those breaking apart moments, they feel like that. They feel like you're being broken apart. But what you're having done to you is you're being tilled. You're having the soil of your self tilled and broken apart so new seeds can get planted. And that's very much this Aries solar eclipse that's coming up here next week at the time of recording this, I think April 19th. Um, that new seed is getting planted. And then there's also, like I live in a very agriculture oriented community, a very rural community where there's way higher than the national average percent of the population who makes their living growing food. And then I sell food. Like I'm still in the food supply chain there in my own way, but like very agriculturally oriented. And all the time, they're very aware of how much rain have we gotten, and either it's too much or it's not enough. Almost always it's not enough, that the crops need more rain. The ponds are dry, which means the cattle don't have the rain they don't have the water they need. So like the rain coming down is a vitally important part of growing the harvest that you're going to be able to claim someday. They want the rain. Like, you think about like in cities or like people who aren't connected to the earth so much, like there can be like a complaining about rain or overcast or humidity or like all of that, and not in an agricultural community, because you can't have a harvest without the water that grows the crops. And so all of the emotions that are coming with the full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio are beautiful in the raindrops that they are onto the soil and the seed that has been planted and the harvest that's going to be growing up through that. This water, these emotions are needed. They're necessary. So when you're sitting there, I just saw myself like I'm like in one of those moments where like I can't breathe and like you're not even making sound. You're just like, it's just like it just hurts. Just like sucks the air right out of you and you just cry until you're as empty as, oh yeah. And when you're in that moment, I invite you to appreciate it, to do the Taurus thing where we luxuriate in the pleasure of the moment. And I invite you to see if you can find the pleasure in the release that those emotions are, the coming up to come out. Like when you cry like that, when you release emotionally like that, whether it's a beautiful sobbing like heartfelt moment, or you're fucking pissed and you're screaming and you're crying angry tears, like whatever, any of it, any kind of emotional release like that, see if you can feel the pleasure. I promise you it's there. It feels, there's such a release. And you think about like other releases that the body has, like when you have to go pee really bad and then you go, and like that feeling in your bladder of like releasing the water, releasing what was in there. It feels so good. It's like one of the most pleasurable sensations the human body can have is emptying your bladder, having that release. Or if you really need to sneeze, there's something like tickling up in your sinuses and you really need to sneeze, and then you do it and you have that release, and that feeling of like euphoria almost, like same as an orgasm even. Crying is like that. Feel the release, feel the lightning, feel the release of tension that it is to emotionally erupt like that. Like what I'm pretty sure is coming with this full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's a very tumultuous time. Um, Even the full like 2.5 days of the moon being in Scorpio that round, like it's just, there's something big that's coming up to come out. And then it won't be in there. Think about that. Like that wound would be healed. And then that pain of that wound would be over. And it would no longer be motivating physical choices in your simple surface level reality. You'd be making different choices because there would no longer be that pain motivating the choice. So, this healing that we are walking through, it is my honor, it's my privilege to get to be here in conversation with you as we go through this all together as a collective. I will be holding myself as we ride this out, and I hope you will be doing the same. I would love to get to hear from you as your cycle comes to a close, or as you catch glimpses of what this cycle is that's coming to a close for you. I always find that interesting, like the practical, physical ways that these astrological energies actually end up unfolding. I love those stories. I will be back in 2 weeks with the next live stream on April 28th. And that's where we will be talking about the Taurus new moon that will be happening later on in May. I also want to invite you to check out my Patreon. We have a spiritual conversation in there once a month called the Sacred Circle. And that happens every fourth Tuesday of the month. I host this on Zoom. And it's a very informal conversation to basically bring the energy of the time up into the light where we can talk about it as a group and validate the energy as a group, affirm each other as a group. It's incredibly cup filling, is my experience of it. I think this will be our 15th one. The Patreon itself, there is a monthly fee to be a member of the Patreon. That's how Patreon works. But it is set at pay what feels good. So if you're interested in having a wider spiritual community or even just tapping into another spiritual community, there's lots of these little spaces out there popping up. If you're exploring those spaces, this is one that you might want to try. And we have the next Sacred Circle coming up. The April one is April 25th. So that's the fourth Tuesday of April. April 25th, and we get those started at 11 a.m. Central Time. So if you would like to join us, I would love to have you there. If you have enjoyed this live stream, I highly appreciate any kind of thumbs up or a comment, like even just a high five down there in the comments. All of that really helps to support the channel and get that much more attention on the work that we're doing here together. So thank you so much again for being here today. It has been my pleasure to talk with you, and I will see you next time. All right, take good care, and I'll be doing the same.